You gave him your time, your energy, your care, and he walked away like it meant nothing. Now he's out there, acting as if you never mattered. Cold, distant, detached. And here you are, wondering how someone who once looked at you like you were the only person in the world now behaves like a stranger. But let's talk about what's really going on. Just because he's no longer calling, texting, or showing emotion doesn't mean you didn't matter. Because you have no more power over your part than over you. So if you ever, once again, have no more power over your part than you did matter. Okay? So here we go. You're calling doesn't mean he doesn't matter. Okay? So here we go. You're calling. People often hide behind silence, not because they've moved on, but because they don't have the strength to confront what they lost. Pretending like you were nothing is easier than facing the fact that they're hurting. It's a defense mechanism, not a reflection of your worth. He may be acting cold or distant now, but that doesn't undo everything you shared or the space you once held in his heart. When you've shared your heart, his behavior is not an erasure of the past. It's a mask for his own emotional confusion. When someone walks away and pretends you never existed, it leaves you questioning everything, your memories, your impact, even your self-worth. But just because he refuses to acknowledge what you meant to him doesn't mean your presence wasn't deeply felt. You were a part of his growth, his comfort, his story. Even if he acts like he's forgotten you, that chapter is still written in his life. The absence of your presence will echo in places he didn't expect, during quiet nights, in a familiar song, or when someone else fails to fill the void you left. This kind of behavior often stems from pride and fear. It's easier to bury emotions than to process them, especially when facing the consequences of pushing someone valuable away. Even men who once loved deeply can act like they don't care, not because they've stopped caring, but because they don't know how to face their regret. Don't confuse his cold exterior with true indifference. There's a difference between moving on and suppressing feelings. And deep down, he knows what he lost. One day, the silence he's hiding behind might feel louder than he expected. Your closure won't come from him suddenly saying, "You were everything." Your act of completion says it will come from the clarity you gain in recognizing your own value. You don't need his recognition to validate your impact. The truth is, someone's inability to show appreciation doesn't mean you weren't appreciated. His silence is not your responsibility to decode. It's your freedom to step forward. You were never nothing. And it's time you stopped waiting for someone who couldn't handle everything you were. Let go with grace, because something better always begins where self-respect is reclaimed. When a man loses someone who truly mattered to him, his first instinct is not always honesty, it's protection. Protection of his pride, of his ego, of the image he wants to show the world. Instead of sitting with the pain and admitting he messed up, he wears a mask. That mask might look like indifference, distraction, or even happiness, but deep underneath it, there's often confusion and regret he hasn't found the courage to face. Acting like you meant nothing is his escape route. It's easier for him to downplay your importance than to confront how deeply you touched his life. If he admitted to himself that losing you shook him, he'd have to also admit the role he played in letting you go. And sometimes that truth is too heavy for someone who isn't ready to grow. So instead, he rewrites the story in his mind. One where your absence is no big deal, and where his choices don't haunt him. But that story isn't the truth. The truth is, he felt something. He saw a future. Or at the very least, comfort in your presence. And when that's gone, it doesn't disappear quietly. It lingers. It visits him in the quiet moments, in the in-between spaces of his life where distraction fades. I thought, why not? He might pretend he's unaffected, but the heart always remembers what the mind tries to forget. That mask might fool others, even fool you for a while, but it can never truly erase what was real. You don't need to chase someone who's hiding behind false strength. His inability to be vulnerable is not your burden to carry. You were real. Your love was real. And someone pretending you weren't, everything says more about their emotional immaturity than about your worth. Let him wear his mask. You've outgrown needing to be seen by someone who refuses to look inward. Just because he isn't reaching out, showing emotion, or expressing anything that looks like pain doesn't mean he's at peace. Silence is often mistaken for healing, but for many people, it's a shield. Some stay quiet, not because they've moved on, but because acknowledging what they feel would force them to confront what they've lost. That confrontation is scary, especially when it means facing their own mistakes and regrets. So instead, they stay silent, not as a sign of strength, but as a form of escape. A person who jumps into distractions is not necessarily someone who has found peace. In fact, the need to constantly stay busy, surround themselves with noise, or even dive into a new relationship quickly can be a clear signal that they're running from something. They try to fill the gap you left, but instead of dealing with the emptiness, they mask it with temporary pleasures. That kind of avoidance may work for a while, but it doesn't last. Eventually, everything they've been suppressing rises back to the surface. Silence can be a comfort for those who don't want to admit how deeply something has affected them. They tell themselves that staying disconnected will help them forget, that if they avoid the memories long enough, they'll fade. But it doesn't work like that. Real healing comes through reflection, through sitting with the pain and learning from it, not pretending it never existed. His quietness doesn't mean your presence didn't matter. It means he's not ready to face what it meant. You might feel tempted to take his silence as indifference, but it's often anything but. It's a pause filled with unsaid words, with emotions that never found their voice. And the truth is, some people are never brave enough to speak those truths out loud. So instead of wondering why he isn't saying anything, remind yourself that silence isn't proof of peace. It's just a sign of someone avoiding the weight of what was real. You were never just a moment in his life that came and went without meaning. You weren't a casual fling or someone he easily forgot. You were part of a much deeper experience, one that helped shape him, challenge him, and in many ways, comfort him. Even if he acts like you were just a phase, the truth is far more lasting. Phases don't leave lasting impressions on the heart. You were a chapter, one that held weight, emotion, and memories too powerful to simply disappear. People like to minimize what they've lost when facing the truth becomes uncomfortable. It's easier to call something temporary than to admit it was meaningful. But deep down, he knows the truth. He knows how he felt in those quiet, shared moments. He remembers how you supported him, believed in him, and gave your heart without holding back. That kind of connection doesn't vanish when the relationship ends. It lingers, whether he chooses to speak on it or not. Chapters in life hold significance because they mark growth and transformation. You were there during a time in his life when things were shifting, evolving, or maybe even falling apart. Your presence offered something steady, something warm, something real. Even if he closed the book and moved on to the next page, your chapter remains written. He might never read it again or admit how deeply it affected him, but its impact doesn't fade just because he pretends it's gone. One day, when things are quiet and life slows down, he may turn back to those memories, not in conversation, but in thought. He may remember how it felt to be cared for in the way you cared. And in that moment, he'll know. He'll know you weren't a phase, and that losing you was not as light or forgettable as he once tried to make it seem. Some chapters are meant to stay with us forever, even if we don't return to them. Some chapters are meant to stay with us forever, even if we don't return to them. When someone treats you like you never mattered, it can shake your sense of self. You might find yourself questioning whether the love you gave was too much, whether you were too available, too emotional, or too trusting. But the way he behaves now, his coldness, his distance, his silence, is not a mirror of your value. It's a reflection of his own emotional capacity and how he deals with discomfort. And he's being People often project their fears, guilt, and regrets onto others when they don't have the tools to process them properly. His inability to acknowledge your importance isn't because you weren't important. It's because facing that truth would mean facing himself. And sometimes that's the hardest thing for a person to do. It's easier to disconnect, to act aloof, or to rewrite history in a way that feels less painful. But those behaviors don't erase the past. They simply highlight a lack of emotional maturity and a fear of vulnerability. You gave your love honestly, and it takes strength to do that. Don't ever let his response make you regret being real. A person who can't recognize or respect what you offered is showing you their limits, not yours. Their emotional distance, avoidance, or dismissiveness doesn't lower your worth. It only reveals where they are in their journey. Sometimes people don't know how to handle something good. They sabotage it, they undervalue it, or they walk away from it because they aren't ready to rise to its level. That's not your burden to carry. You are not responsible for teaching someone how to value love when they aren't ready. Letting someone else's behavior define your value is a dangerous game. You'll end up shrinking yourself just to fit into someone else's comfort zone. Instead, recognize that your worth was never dependent on how he treated you. It was always within you. His coldness might sting, but it also sets you free. Free to choose better. Free to love yourself more deeply. Free to find someone who doesn't need to lose you to understand what they have. Even someone who truly loved you can cause deep pain when they don't know how to handle their emotions or take responsibility for their actions. Love alone is not enough to make a relationship healthy. Without emotional maturity, even the most genuine feelings can become destructive. He may have loved you in his own way, but if he wasn't willing to be honest, to communicate, to grow, then that love wasn't equipped to last. Feelings without accountability often lead to confusion, disappointment, and heartbreak. It's easy to believe that if someone loved you, they would have treated you better. And while that should be true, reality isn't always so simple. Some people are carrying years of emotional baggage they've never unpacked. They project their fears, insecurities, and wounds onto the people who care for them most. When you came into his life, he may have felt something real, but instead of rising to meet that love, he may have let his unresolved issues get in the way. That isn't because you weren't enough. It's because he wasn't ready. You are not responsible for healing what he never tried to fix himself. It's not your job to carry his unhealed past or to be the one who saves him from himself. That's a weight no one should have to bear. You showed up with love, with hope, with sincerity, and that was more than enough. But you cannot pour yourself into someone who doesn't even know how to receive love in a healthy way. You cannot lose yourself trying to help someone else find peace they refused to seek on their own. What you offered was real, and that matters. But now it's time to understand that loving someone is not the same as fixing them. You deserve a love that's returned with care, consistency, and emotional responsibility. You deserve to be met at your level, not dragged into chaos because someone couldn't deal with their own pain. His mistakes are his to confront. Your healing is yours to protect. Let go of the guilt, the questions, and the burden. It was never yours to carry in the first place. It is not your job to let go of the guilt, the questions, and the burden. It was never yours to carry in the first place. There will come a moment when everything he tried to ignore rises to the surface. It won't be in a loud or dramatic way. It might happen on a quiet night, long after you've stopped waiting for his return. Maybe a song will play that reminds him of you, or he'll pass by a place you once visited together. In those moments, your memory will hit him like a wave, catching him off guard and pulling him back into everything he thought he had buried. That's when the truth came out. That's how real connections work. They don't vanish just because someone refuses to acknowledge them. He may not say it out loud, and he may never show it, but the absence you left behind has weight. There is a certain kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful, it feels empty. He might have convinced himself that he could move on quickly, that filling the space with someone else would erase the ache. But eventually, he will realize that no one else brings what you brought. Your kindness, your understanding, the way you made him feel seen, all of that stays with a person, even when they try to replace it. When he finds himself in a new relationship and starts to feel the lack of emotional depth or genuine connection, that's when it may really hit him. He'll start to compare, even if he doesn't want to. He will start to compare, even if he doesn't want to. He'll start to miss the way he felt around you, the comfort, the laughter, the peace. Sometimes, people only begin to appreciate what they had when it's no longer there to hold. And though it may be too late for him to come back, it won't be too late for him to realize the truth. He lost something rare, but by the time that realization comes, you'll be further along in your healing. You won't need his recognition to validate what you already knew. You mattered deeply. And while he's sitting in the echo of what used to be, you'll be growing, thriving, and creating something beautiful for yourself. That's the quiet victory in all of this. You didn't need to prove your worth. Time did that for you. Closure doesn't always come in the form of an apology or a heartfelt confession. Sometimes the person who hurt you won't have the courage to face what they've done or the strength to acknowledge what they lost. And that's okay, because your healing does not depend on their words. Waiting for someone to validate your experience only keeps you stuck in their silence. True closure comes from within, from recognizing your own truth and deciding that you no longer need anyone else to confirm it. You already know what you brought into his life. You remember the way you loved, how much effort you put in, how deeply you cared. That doesn't go away just because someone chose to walk away or pretend it didn't matter. You were consistent, present, and real. And even if he couldn't say it or show it, deep down, he felt it too. People often know exactly what they had. They just don't always have the maturity to say it out loud, especially when pride and guilt get in the way. You don't need to chase after answers or beg for acknowledgement to feel whole again. The power is in owning your impact without needing someone else to agree with it. You were enough, even if he failed to see it. The peace you're looking for won't be found in his return or his regret. It will be found in your own decision to stop carrying the weight of someone else's silence and to move forward without waiting for closure that may never come. Letting go isn't about forgetting or pretending it didn't hurt. It's about deciding that your healing matters more than holding on. It's about giving yourself permission to find peace in clarity, not in apologies. You know who you were in that relationship. You know how deeply you showed up. And that's all the closure you ever truly needed. The rest is just noise. It's one of the most painful things in the world to give someone your heart and watch them treat it like it held no value. When someone acts like you are nothing, it can shake your confidence and make you question your worth. But the truth is, your value isn't determined by someone else's ability to recognize it. Just because he chose to turn away from your light doesn't mean that light stops shining. His inability to see your worth says far more about his blindness than it ever could about you. Sometimes people walk away from things they aren't ready for. They reject what they can't understand, or worse, what they don't feel worthy of. Instead of rising to meet your energy, your care, your love, they turn their back and pretend none of it mattered. But pretending doesn't erase reality. You were still the one who showed up. You were still the one who gave, supported, and stood strong. And none of that becomes meaningless just because someone chose not to honor it. Not because someone said to you, you should do better. Because someone chose not to honor it, you are still radiant, still powerful, still full of everything that makes you special. Your glow is not dependent on the person standing next to you. It exists because of who you are. And while the wrong person may have missed it or taken it for granted, the right person will recognize it immediately. You don't need to dim yourself to fit into someone else's narrow vision. You were never too much. They were simply not enough to appreciate the fullness of who you are. Keep shining, even if he couldn't see it. Don't let someone's closed eyes convince you that the light no longer exists. The right people will find you, drawn to the strength, warmth, and beauty you bring. You don't need to chase validation, just continue being who you are. The world has a way of returning energy to those who stay true to themselves. What he failed to see, someone else would cherish fully, and more importantly, so should you. His silence might feel like a rejection, like a final confirmation that you never truly mattered. But in reality, it's a door closing on someone who didn't know how to value what he had. It hurts, yes, but it also creates space for peace, for clarity, and for something better. Because sometimes, even when something better, when someone doesn't have the courage to communicate or the maturity to honor your presence, their silence becomes a gift in disguise. It gives you the freedom to stop waiting, to stop wondering, and to finally let go. You are not here to chase after someone who couldn't see your worth. That isn't your story. You were not meant to stay small just to be loved by someone who didn't know how to love you fully. The path forward is about remembering who you are outside of his gaze. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself you gave away in hopes he would stay. It's about choosing yourself even if he didn't choose you. His inability to appreciate you doesn't define you. Your ability to walk away with your dignity intact does. Losing someone who couldn't hold space for your love is not really a loss. It's a redirection, a reminder that you deserve someone who doesn't need to lose you to understand your value. It's a powerful turning point. The moment you stop needing closure from someone else and start giving it to yourself, you stop asking why he left and start asking what you want next. And slowly, you begin to realize that you were never missing a piece of him. You were only missing a deeper connection with yourself. You were his everything, and maybe he'll realize that one day. Maybe he won't. But now, it's time for you to become yours, to stop pouring energy into someone who no longer stands beside you and start investing it in your own growth, your healing, your joy. You are not what was left behind. You are what rises after. And the silence that once broke you will become the quiet that rebuilds you. One strong, beautiful piece at a time.